Imagine waking up to breaking news alerts flashing across every major network in America, saying tensions between the United States and Iran have reached a critical point. Fighter jets scrambling in the Gulf, naval fleets repositioning overnight, oil markets reacting within seconds, and social media exploding with one question: are we on the edge of another major war in the Middle East? This is not just another headline designed for clicks. This is a decades-long rivalry shaped by revolution, sanctions, covert operations, cyber warfare, proxy battles, and nuclear fears that continues to influence global politics, energy prices, and national security decisions inside Washington. To understand what a potential Iran versus America conflict really means for viewers here in the USA, we have to rewind to 1979, when the Iranian Revolution overthrew a US-backed monarch and replaced him with a theocratic government deeply suspicious of Western influence. An event followed by the hostage crisis at the American embassy in Tehran that traumatized the American public and reshaped foreign policy thinking for generations. Since then, mistrust hardened into a strategic standoff where economic sanctions became a primary weapon, diplomacy alternated with threats, and the nuclear question moved to the center of international debate as Tehran expanded uranium enrichment, while American leaders insisted that a nuclear-armed Iran would destabilize the entire region. Fast forward through decades of tension, including naval incidents in the Persian Gulf, accusations of support for armed groups across Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, and targeted killings of military figures, and you begin to see a pattern not of open total war, but of shadow conflict, pressure campaigns, and carefully calibrated retaliation designed to send messages without crossing the line into full-scale invasion. For American audiences, the biggest immediate concern in any escalation scenario is energy security, because roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes through the narrow waterway known as the Strait of Hormuz, and even the threat of disruption there can cause gasoline prices to spike across California, Texas, New York, and beyond within days, affecting everything from airline tickets to grocery bills. Military analysts often compare capabilities, and on paper, the United States maintains the world's most advanced air force, a blue water navy capable of projecting power anywhere on the planet, stealth bombers, aircraft carriers, cyber command infrastructure, and a defense budget larger than the next several countries combined. While Iran focuses on asymmetric strategies, including ballistic missiles, fast attack boats, drones, and regional partner networks that can pressure American interests without directly confronting U.S. armored divisions in a conventional battlefield. That difference in doctrine means any conflict would likely begin with air and missile exchanges, cyber operations targeting infrastructure, and regional flare-ups rather than tanks rolling across borders, because geography itself shapes strategy. Mountain ranges, urban density, and coastal choke points all complicate invasion scenarios. Another factor shaping the equation is the role of regional actors such as Israel, whose security concerns regarding Iranian influence and nuclear development add another layer of urgency and unpredictability, potentially widening any confrontation beyond a bilateral clash into a broader regional crisis. For Americans watching from home, the phrase World War III trends quickly on social platforms whenever missiles are mentioned. Yet global war requires alliance chains and great power mobilization that leaders on all sides generally try to avoid due to the catastrophic consequences in a nuclear age. Meaning, rhetoric can sound apocalyptic, even when decision-makers are carefully signaling limits behind closed doors. Economic warfare remains one of Washington's primary tools, with sanctions targeting banking systems, oil exports, shipping networks, and technology transfers, measures designed to squeeze revenue streams while avoiding immediate battlefield casualties. Yet sanctions also carry humanitarian side effects, and often strengthen hardline political narratives inside the targeted country. Cybersecurity experts warn that in any heightened confrontation, digital infrastructure could become a front line, from energy pipelines to financial networks, illustrating how modern conflict extends far beyond soldiers and into code, satellites, and data centers that ordinary citizens depend on every day. Inside the United States, political debate over how to handle Tehran frequently splits along strategic lines, with some policymakers arguing for maximum pressure and credible military deterrence, while others advocate diplomacy, multilateral agreements, and phased sanction relief in exchange for verifiable nuclear limits, reflecting broader questions about America's role in the world after 2 decades of war fatigue following Iraq and Afghanistan. Public opinion also plays a critical role because sustained military campaigns require domestic support, congressional authorization, budget allocations, and long-term planning that cannot be improvised overnight without significant consequences for elections and economic stability. If limited strikes were to occur, markets would likely react instantly, oil futures jumping, defense stocks fluctuating, safe haven assets like gold rising, and consumer confidence dipping as uncertainty spreads, demonstrating how geopolitics directly intersects with retirement accounts and household budgets. Military planners evaluate escalation ladders, mapping possible responses and counter-responses to avoid miscalculation, because history shows that unintended incidents at sea or in the air can spiral if communication channels break down, which is why even adversaries often maintain back-channel contacts to prevent accidental war. The nuclear dimension remains perhaps the most sensitive variable, not necessarily because either side seeks to use such weapons, but because the perception of capability alters strategic calculus, deterrence theory, and alliance commitments across Europe and Asia. Critics of intervention argue that geography and history demonstrate how difficult it is to impose political change through external force, while proponents of firm deterrence argue that failure to respond decisively to aggression invites greater instability, creating a policy dilemma that has persisted across multiple administrations from both major American political parties. For everyday viewers, the practical questions often boil down to, will my taxes increase? Will my son or daughter be deployed? Will gas hit $5 or $6 a gallon? Will cybersecurity threats disrupt banking apps or power grids? And these concerns highlight that foreign policy is never abstract. It is also important to distinguish between rhetoric and action, because leaders sometimes use strong language for domestic audiences while privately signaling restraint, meaning headlines alone do not equal mobilization orders. The Middle East's complex web of alliances, sectarian dynamics, economic interests, and historical grievances means no conflict remains isolated for long. Yet it also means stakeholders share incentives to prevent uncontrollable escalation that could devastate infrastructure, energy exports, and civilian populations. In Washington, strategic thinkers often frame the challenge as managing competition without triggering catastrophe, a balancing act involving deterrence, diplomacy, intelligence gathering, coalition building, and, occasionally, shows of force designed to reassure allies. Meanwhile, within Iran, internal political currents, economic pressures, and regional ambitions influence decision-making, reminding observers that states are not monolithic actors, but systems shaped by domestic calculations as well as external threats. For American audiences trying to cut through sensationalism, the key is to watch for concrete indicators such as formal declarations, large-scale troop deployments, congressional war authorizations, evacuation advisories, and sustained logistics mobilization rather than relying solely on dramatic soundbites. Historically, Both sides have demonstrated a pattern of calibrated retaliation followed by de-escalation once messages are delivered, suggesting that, while risks are real, there are also institutional mechanisms and strategic incentives aimed at preventing open-ended total war. However, misjudgment, technological accidents, or domestic political pressures can always alter trajectories, which is why analysts emphasize crisis management frameworks and communication hotlines. Ultimately, the story of Iran versus America is less about a single explosive moment and more about a long strategic chess match involving deterrence, ideology, energy security, regional influence,